All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started here. I would like to thank you all very much for joining us here today on our webinar here. Today we are covering rebuilding the Management Reporter Datamart integration. And we do have today's webinar broken down into 4 parts here. What is the Datamart integration and database? Common changes that can require a rebuild, the steps on how to do so, and then kind of a walkthrough just to show you the steps in action. All right, first of all, what is the Datamart? As you might know, Management Reporter was the replacement for the FRX program for financial accounting. One of the biggest complaints when it was first released was its performance. It was extremely slow compared to the FRX program. So starting with RU3 of Management Reporter 2012, Microsoft introduced Datamart integration, which creates a snapshot of your GP company's reporting to Management Reporter. It does this by creating what's called the Datamart database. So when you generate a report in Management Reporter, the data is pulled from this Datamart database and not from the GP company databases. And the result is faster queries and report generation. Not to mention, it also sees an improvement in performance in GP, since tables aren't getting locked during that querying step of the report generation. However, once that data is pulled into the Datamart database, it is not pulled in again if certain changes are made to the data. This means that the changes will not be reflected in Management Reporter. So when those reports are generated, the data is going to be incorrect or not reflecting changes made. This means that the only way to pull these changes into the Datamart database is to rebuild it. It's a fairly simple process here. Like I said, we'll cover it coming up here. When do you need to rebuild that Datamart database? The following changes oftentimes require the Datamart to be rebuilt. If you restore your Dynamics ERP databases from a backup, if you copy your ERP and MR databases into a test environment, and the reason is that the databases within SQL kind of get tagged with a unique identifier on the back end, and so copying them over is going to cause them to change, which causes some issues with Management Reporter. Activating or deactivating analytical accounting for reporting in Management Reporter. That's kind of under the company setup there. It'll give you accounting reporting and analytical accounting reporting. Without the account reporting, you won't be able to report or show you the information in Management Reporter. So if you toggle that analytical accounting on or off, that will also affect it. If you make changes to account categories or account descriptions, that one pulled over. If you use any of the Pistol account tools to make the changes, such as the math modifier, anything like that. And lastly, fiscal period and fiscal year changes. Stuff like that, if you have your fiscal year set up but you need to extend it to cover a change in your fiscal year dates, if you have to shorten year for the same reason, anything like that, it will still show the old periods until you rebuild that Datamart. I'm kind of just jumping back and forth here. I see that we have some people that are starting to come in here. I'm just seeing if there's any questions coming in. All right, I am not seeing any here, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the steps to rebuild the Datamart database. Before rebuilding the Datamart, you have to have all users exit Management Reporter. This is simply because it will cause errors if they try and generate the report, so it's better just to have them out. This process does not repeat any reports, row or column definitions or anything like that you may have put together. It only deletes the data used to generate the reports. You will also need to have administrator privileges within Management Reporter, as we need access to the configuration console in order to complete this process. And the first step is to make a backup of your current Management Reporter database. That kind of shows you just right-click on it, tasks, and backup. I'm going to hop over to my test server here quick, and I want to show you this. There's a Management Reporter and a Management Reporter DM. That's your Datamart database is the one marked DM. This one that says just Management Reporter That's what stores your report definitions, your column definitions, your row definitions, that type of information. So this is the important one that we want to keep. The reason that we recommend making a backup is usually they're right next to one another. And so if you are acting a little fast or not seeing anything and you accidentally delete that, without that backup, you have to rebuild all those reports. But if you have this saved and backup, we can easily restore it. And since we're having to rebuild the Datamart anyways, you know, that was one of the reasons we have to restore that here. So no harm, no foul. We can get back up and run very quickly. And then, or back it up. Next is we have to disable the Datamart integration in the configuration console. Over on the left here, you'll see ERP integrations, GP, and that's our test server there. Just click, when you click on that, you'll see this field. Just click on the button that says Disable Integration. Once it's disabled, you can then remove it. We just recommend doing this step by step, just to make sure that the Management Reporter configuration console doesn't have any issues. Okay, you then want to stop the processes, and this is just on the Management Reporter services. You'll see Application Service and Process Service. Just click on the stop buttons. You can also go into Task Manager or Services.msc and stop them. But since we can just do everything here in Configuration Console, we'll save ourselves a little bit of time of having to go in and find it in other programs and then hop back and forth. All right, then what we need to do is delete that Datamart database. Again, you just right-click on that, go to Delete. I'll bring up the delete window here. I do recommend putting it checking close existing connections and clicking OK. If the configuration console is, if the processes are stopped and the integration is removed, there should be nothing. But sometimes there might be a lingering connection here, and just putting that check in there just causes SQL to close all of them before it deletes it, because SQL will not generally let you delete a database if there's a connection to it. All right, then we want to hop back over to our configuration console and restart those services. Just as easy as stopping, except you just click Start. And once they're running, it'll stay over here. It's running. We want to create that integration. And you go do that by going to File, Configuration, set up the new Datamart integration. So you can see they're running here. Just File, Configure. It's going to ask you what you want to set. Now, it should already have the grayed out checkboxes in the services because they're already installed here. And as you can see, there's a lot of options here. Management Reporter does work with all the ERP lines, AX, GP, NAV, and SL here. As you can see, there's still the option for the Microsoft Dynamics GP Legacy. That has not been updated in some time. That is the older, slower model, where it would query the company databases directly. And since what we want to do is do the Datamart here, that's the one we want to put that check in. All right. A lot of times you might get this warning. I shouldn't say error. That's a warning. It says Microsoft Access Database Engine. You can just click Next on that. That's an old requirement. Management Reporter, they really haven't updated here. And then you're going to come to this screen here. It has Dynamics GP connection information and Datamart connection information. And as I explained in here, use your SA credentials if possible. You can see it asks for usernames. I know some people have SA disabled. The reason we recommend using your SA credentials is most GP credentials have their password encrypted by GP, which means typing it in here as you would in GP is not going to let you in. So unless you have a separate account that was created directly in SQL to access the information, you're not going to really be able to do it. I know there are some people that disable SA due to security issues with that. That's fine, as long as you created somebody that has a database owner to everything here, we should be fine as long as it was created within SQL and not GP. The top one is your how it connects to the GP information to pull that information. It'll ask you to select your system database, which is named Dynamics by default. But starting with the 2013, you can name your system database to something else. The lower Datamart connection information is where your Datamart database will create it. Now you can point them to different SQL servers, but a lot of times people just point them to the same one. It does kind of speed up the process a little bit since it's not having to move everything over a network line here between databases, which, especially with this initial integration, can take some time. Once you have that, you can click Next. We'll bring this up. We'll tell you what the configuration summary is doing and say it's creating that Datamart. You go ahead and click on Configure. It will run for a while, and then eventually put a check mark by it. It will have a red X if it failed. But generally, if you've already got the Datamart database on there to begin with, this process of recreating it doesn't cause any issues here. So go ahead and click Close. Then we need to enable the integration. It's very similar to when we disabled it. The exact same window, GP, it'll show your integrations here. You just click on Enable it. And this is where it'll start to pull the information in. And for some time, it'll say this may take a while. You'll see a little scroll bar up there. The integration will make an initial copy of the data from your selected companies into the Datamart database. Depending on the number and sizes of your company databases and the workload on your SQL servers, this can take several hours. If you generally have one or two companies, you should be fine. If you have several dozen or one of the larger ones, you might want to run this overnight because it's going to reduce that stress on the SQL server here. It won't affect your GP performance here. Once it is complete, the data will be refreshed, and then you can run your reports as you had previously. Since, as noted, this process preserves that information here. So I'm just going to check here quick, see if we have any questions before we begin. I am not showing any here. Excuse me. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop back over to our test server here, and we're going to rebuild our Datamart here. All right. So this is our, went straight into SQL Server here. I have 13, 15, and 16 GP running on here. So I have my Dynamics database named DYN and then the last two digits of the version of GP here. So, and our Management Reporter company one is we set this up for GP 2016. And that's where the Management Reporter is pulling from here. So now hop over to our configuration console. As you can see here, it explains what it's connected to. Here's our companies that we have on our 2016 Fabricam and 3 Amigos. Both are rather small. 3 Amigos is just kind of a copy of Fabricam here for testing if we jump back and forth between companies here. Plus, it also prevents us from getting the system date pop-up and whatnot regarding the test company. So, as well, the first thing we want to do is make a backup of our Management Reporter here. Tasks, backup. Sorry, I like to move my mouse a little faster than my eyes process here sometimes, so I'm not going to be able to see it here. So as you can see, it's the backup here. It's pointing where it's going to back it up, and it's going to just back it up to the default SQL here. So you just go ahead and click OK. And it's fairly small. I don't have any custom definitions or anything in there, so mine just has the default information here. And usually it's pretty small unless you have maybe hundreds or thousands of custom reports, maybe Management Reporter. That'll only take a minute or two to update. So what we want to do now is come in here and we need to, and clicking on our integration here, there's our disable button. It'll spin for a little bit. Okay. It doesn't refresh automatically, it does it periodically, so you just want to wait, and then we want to remove this here. It's going to ask us to verify this. You want to remove the ERT integration. Go ahead and click on yes. And again, it'll spin. And then when it clears out, it drops you out of there because it's no longer in there. And then we want to stop both of our services. As you can see, it says stopping. If you've done any service stopping in Task Manager, it kind of shows the same thing, stopping when it's ending the process, and then stopped when it's fully stopped. Now we need to remove our current Datamart one. So again, Management Reporter DM. And you can rename that. I'll show you here in our process. So we want to delete this out here. Just click on OK, and it'll flash away when it's done. So we still have the Management Reporter, and the configuration console still points to that. See, it says right here, database connection, GP 2013 test management reporter. So then we want to restart both of our services. Process is running, and then application should be right behind it. There we are. Now we want to go back up here to File and Configure. We want to recreate our GP Datamart. Okay, again, Microsoft Access, that's fine here. This is pointing to our server. If you have an instance, it's just like in SQL Management Studio. You put / instance there. But since I'm using the default instance, it automatically knows to look for it. And it's not, we don't recommend doing this encrypt connection, especially if it's on the same SQL server, because it's really not connecting that far. And when you enter in the information on the drop-down, it'll ask you to select your company database here. Again, we have this for 2016. Let's see, GP 2013. This is where we could change the Management Reporter one if we want, but we're going to keep it all on here. And here's where you can change your Management Reporter Datamart name. I like keeping them very similar, where it's Management Reporter DM, because then they are right next to each other. So if you have a lot of databases, you're not having to scroll and look, and it's familiar here. And so then we have our information entered in, so we click Next. There was nothing on that to test. Everything looks good here. And so it just asks us to click on Configure. And see, there's the little scroll bar that I told you about pops up saying that the features are being configured. And so now we will just sit here and kind of wait for that to complete. There's not much that you can do here. It says this can take several minutes. Kind of all it's doing right now is creating the Datamart database and getting some of the company information from that from your Dynamics database here. And again, the larger it is, the more companies you have, this might take longer here, but this is usually a pretty quick process, usually only a minute or two. And then once this is done, all we have to do is go in and enable the integration. So that's taken care of. And this is a step you could probably run if you have to rebuild that Datamart and you're a larger customer with a lot of companies. This is something you can probably do when you're open or during business hours here, because this part doesn't really impact it. It's that setting up that initial integration where it copies all of that data over here. Yep, as you can see, the check marks there. So we are good to go. And we'll wait for that to refresh here. And it'll even under tasks list, this will kind of tell you what you need to do. So you can click it and it brings you to the same window. So as you can see there, we click there and it brings us, or we can come down here to the tasks. And the tasks are actually pretty nice. They're usually top to bottom in the order that you have to do your processes. And so once you click it, both of them, like I said, both of my companies in GP 2016 are set up for accounting reporting in Management Reporter. And there's nothing you really have to do with that. That's more or less initial deployment of Management Reporter. Generally, once you've had the Datamart built once, you can do this if you have test databases. You can kind of come in here and drop them if you want. But we're just going to leave those, and then just click on Enable Integration. Okay, so the initial integration has not started. You see the scroll bar here as it is kind of processing. The task list has dropped down because the task is started here. As you can see up here, kind of shows some of the information here. What it's doing is it's basically just kind of giving you an update here. Last time everything was fully integrated. It wasn't run yet. Last time integration occurred, 12:24 p.m. It has it by the seconds here. And I show you how far it's processed. So far, I got 104,000 records processed. As you can see, it'll give you a little update as it processes. And this is usually pretty good. It won't go into the non-responsive status here, as long as everything's working good here. As you can see, it says what finalizes the integration. It's kind of one of the last things that's going on here. this run. And Management Reporter, unfortunately, or SQL Management Studio, not Management Reporter, excuse me. The refresh is good when you delete stuff, but when you build these, you see it isn't here. So if you just want to see it, we'll just, it doesn't like to do it. So we'll just refresh my connection here. As you can see, the Datamart popped in there. Up and back over there. And then once it's done, it basically just goes, initial integration is complete. Periodic integrations will occur, and it can show you the date of everything was successfully run. And then that's it. Your Datamart has been rebuilt. So any of those changes that we had discussed, count modifications, fiscal period modifications, analytical accounting, reporting toggling, that is now updated, pulled into the Datamart database. So when you run your Management Reporter reports against it, it is pulling in that refreshed data. So everything should look good. All right, and that is pretty much it. It's not a big process, but a lot of times I know SQL can kind of seem scary, especially with deleting here. But the Datamart is one of those where you don't really need to back it up because it's easy enough to pull that data back in. So I'm going to do one last check here to see if anybody has any questions. All right, I am not seeing anything popping into the webinar here. So with that, I think I'll do this here a little bit early, not the full hour here, but halfway, get a little time back for you. If you do have any questions on this or other reporting or GP questions, by all means, feel free to contact us. There is my contact information, our office line, and my direct email. And then here's kind of our company-wide support address, support@iscorp.biz. The phone number is the same, and then our website, iscorp.biz, where we do list our webinars on a regular basis to join. So again, we're going to go ahead and wrap this up a little bit earlier today and get you half an hour back. So I would like to thank you all again for joining us here on the Rebuilding the Datamart webinar. Again, if you have any questions, by all means, feel free to let us know. And with that, I would like to wish you all a good day. Take care, and I hope you learned something.